All right, everybody. I just got loaded over here in Helena, Montana. That's the extent of my load right there. This is going to be a heavy one, boys. This entire load weighs 3,000 pounds. Yeah. Yep, it's a big one. It's going to be a struggle getting up over the passes in Montana, loaded to the gills like this. So we get to use 4-foot tarps today, thank goodness. And we'll need to use two 4-footers. Boy, better walk on the edges. All right, so you want to tarping 101. You always want to do the back tarp first, so the forward tarp laps over it, keeping the wind from hitting it. I've seen some guys do it backwards, and you get that tarp that wants to come off on you. So this one's going clear down to Florida, boys. It's going to be a good long haul for the new truck. Part of me is looking forward to the long haul, and part of me is not. It's going to be a little boring driving, and this new truck has bad tires on it and all kinds of stuff that I did get it aligned, and thank God I did that because it drives so much better now. But those no-name tires, whatever the hell they are, they need to be changed. They're wobbly and shaky and out of balance and all kinds of crap. About right. What I'm just looking at is I want to have it fairly even. So it looks good. You gotta look good out on the road, guys. It's the name of the game. Once again, a coil tarp would have came in handy. Y'all guys forgot to remind me to buy one. Come on.
Okay. I don't know if you guys saw what I was doing there. These corners will be really sharp on my tarp for that long of a drive, so putting that out there to where that rides on the tarp instead of the edge, that's what we want to do.
Holy cow, it's getting warm out here. I mean, this is February and it's Montana, guys. I think because this is such a long haul, I'm gonna go ahead and run the bungee rope. So that should be all I need. Okay. I always want to try to pull there's the rear tarp, pull it forward, keep it from sliding backwards, since there won't really be a whole lot of bungee rope on that second tarp because it's mostly going to be the forward tarp. And then use some long ones in the middle. I might need another set of bungees. We'll see here. Okay. I'm gonna grab another one because I need some small bungees. Camera. Let's pull it straight down. I realized I made a mistake on this one. I should put that on the pointy end in. There we go. Bump my camera again. Pretty much buttons up the back. I'll put a, well, the rope's gonna go here, so I guess that's gonna be fine. Okay, let's go do the front. So the front goes opposite, remember? So we want to do end flap down and then side, hang on, side flaps, set it backwards, side flaps first with the big bungees. So pokey end in, because we don't want to cut our tarp. Okay.
some short bungees. See, that way wind hits it and water hits it. If we did it the other way, this was underside, it would be I've done it before by mistake and it doesn't really matter, but I feel like it makes more sense to do it that way for wind and water. Okay, I'm gonna run some, I'll show you. I'm afraid this flap will come out and start getting into the fifth wheel and everything, so we're gonna run some bungees off of there down to my hooks. If you don't have hooks, then you could just run from there back around to here. Probably should be the long bungees. Let's see. Yeah, like if you didn't have those hooks, you could just do one of these numbers. Ooh, I gotta not do that. I got a wiring harness right there. Okay. Come on. That'll keep that flap from coming out. All right. Just about done. Just run some rope. This rope hasn't been used for quite some time. We want to keep this tarp from pulling over to the other side when we run our rope.
So this load, guys, it goes down to basically Clearwater, Tampa area. I thought when the dispatcher told me, I thought he said Tallahassee. He must have said Tampa. But anyway, so that'll bring me right through Wildwood, my favorite stomping grounds. And this truck needs a bad case of polish, or yeah, aluminum polish. I wasn't really planning on doing aluminum polish quite yet. I wanted to make some money first and spend money on the important stuff like an overhead adjustment, an engine tune, ECM tune, things like that that'll make more difference. But if I'm right there, I don't know, we'll see. Definitely plan on getting a truck wash at some point on the trip. It's been in the cold climates and I haven't been able to wash it. I don't think I'll have to wait all the way to Wildwood to get it washed, but Wildwood has a good truck wash down there. Okay. This second step here is basically just to take up space, take up slack in my rope. It does hold it down a little better too, but I just go back over and take up some slack. Oh, not there.
I didn't pull that first one tight enough. I was a little afraid of pulling the tarp one direction. Done. All right, guys, that's it. I'm gonna make sure I didn't forget anything. I'm out of here. Next stop, Florida. Guys, I just stopped in Billings, Montana to get some fuel.
Turn left on North
not
Frontage
diesel
Road,
fuel.
then take the first right.
I had to get some patties. They got a McDonald's over here, so I ordered 16 patties. Ate 11 of them for lunch, and I got 5 of them left for snack. So just had to get some people fuel. So now I'm gonna take off, go down 90 and hit 12 that cut across Montana there. And this needs to be over in Tampa, Florida on Monday.
Turn right on Johnson Lane, then take the first left.
I'm just gonna keep on making tracks, putting down the miles. So guys, this is the first load. This is the second load on this new truck, but this is the first load with the dispatch service. I don't think I've explained much of what's going on because I've been taking a break, doing all kinds of stuff, but I did hire a dispatch service because I had to admit to myself, as much as I think I'm a good dispatcher, I am not. I suck. And
Turn left at the traffic light.
our van driver, John, he's been on the dispatch service for ever since the beginning of the year. Jeff, our other flatbed driver, I dispatched him most of January, and then towards the end, the last couple of loads, we switched over to the dispatcher.
now that same dispatcher is dispatching me. And so let's see here. So theoretically,
In 1 mile,
I'll probably
take exit 456 on the right.
I'll probably keep my
I-90
load board
east.
subscriptions, but I won't really need to look at the load board anymore. And it was nice, like I was able to deliver that load in Belgrade, and then hang on, let me see here. I was able to deliver that load in Belgrade and then go and get fuel and do my stuff while the dispatcher was finding a load for me. And he found me this load,
Take exit 456
which
on the right.
I have to say I'm
I-90 east.
impressed about. $6,500 to go down to Tampa, Florida from Montana. That's definitely better than I've been able to find. So I'm impressed. So we'll see how it works going forward, but this will definitely free up some of my time and let me do what I do best, which is drive, work on the truck, and sleep. Right? Those are the things that I need to be doing. I need to not be spending time on the load board making sure my other drivers have loads, because then it just kind of takes me away from what I need to be doing, which is driving, tarping, strapping, doing truck maintenance, and getting some sleep. So anyway, we'll see how that goes, but I was pretty impressed with this load that he got me. We'll see if he can keep it up. All right, guys, I've got the better mic connected now, so you can't hear as much background noise. Got my window open because it is warm over here in Montana. It's like, I don't even, it feels like 60 degrees over here. So, you guys, I hired a dispatcher. I hired a dispatch service. For years, I've been so against that model. You know, you get one, or as when you have your own authority, you get a couple of calls a day from a dispatch service, and they want to offer you their services. And I never really hung up on them, but I was basically just told them, we don't hire dispatch services by, and with the last couple of months of the year of 2025, I realized that maybe I shouldn't just throw that model out. Maybe there's a real reason that works. And I'm going to say, guys, I am thoroughly impressed with the way they've been doing it. Now, these two guys, one's a van dispatcher, one's a flatbed dispatcher. They speak English fairly well, but English was not their first language, and a pretty thick accent, which is, I think it's a requirement when you're a dispatcher that you have a thick accent. And that's fine, because honestly, they've been doing a fantastic job, both of them. And I have to give them props, because when I hired the first one for the van driver, it was me kind of saying, look, I don't know anything about van markets. So I was able to do that and keep my pride intact, because I didn't really have any reason to know van. And as good as he's been doing with the van, I decided to give him a shot with the flatbed with his partner. And honestly, he's been doing a better job with the flatbed than I can do. And that's a little humbling for me, because I like to think I'm good at this. I like to think I understand the markets. I like to think I study and I know. But the bottom line is that when I'm trucking and I'm tarping and I'm strapping and all this stuff, I don't have the time to truly understand the market. I don't have the time to sit there and watch the load board for the best paying load that pops up.
I also don't have time to be calling brokers to give updates, which is something they take care of. So I'm not bothered by brokers. Now, brokers could still call me and I wouldn't mind it, but they take on all that stuff. They're sitting at a desk looking at multiple screens, probably sending emails. They're probably, so that, and that's the thing, especially in the van market where I was really struggling, was about 80% of the loads posted don't even give you a phone number. It's only an email address. Well, when you're cruising down the road, watching the load board and see if something pops up and you click on it and just can click call, that's one thing. When you have to sit here and type up an email, that's a totally different thing. Not safe, right? Talk about texting and driving is not safe. Sending emails is not safe. So that was kind of a no-go. To be honest with you, watching the load board here and hitting the call button is probably not even safe. But at least that is just pushing a button or two, and everything's auto on the load board. So you just push a button, call, and then hit call. And what's really annoying is when TQL has the post number, the load post number, and it's a freaking 8-digit number. 8 digits is just long enough it's hard to remember. You have to flip back and forth. That's stupid. I hate TQL for that. I wish they'd understand that. But the bottom line is no more. I don't do that shit anymore. Now I can drive safer. I can focus on my load. I can focus on securing the load and making sure it gets there on time. So I'm thinking this might be the way forward, guys, which is a total shift from last year, total shift from every year previous, where I thought dispatchers, all they do is take extra money. Like, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to dispatch yourself. I suppose that's technically true if it's just you, but there is a lot of stuff on your plate when you are a driver and have your own authority, and having a dedicated dispatcher, you guys, I'm seeing the benefits. So yeah, I just wanted to make a video on that. I am now I could still do load board videos because I still have the subscription to the load board, and I probably will still stay in tune to the market, but I really don't need to anymore, which is nice. So I'm pretty excited to see how these guys work. On the van side, the van has been outperforming my flatbed with me dispatching the flatbed. So that's pretty incredible. So anyway, that's what's going on in my world. And this load's got to get down to Florida on Monday. And then from Florida, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, I'd kind of like to stop at Wildwood and at least get a good wash. I would really like to take a day and get all my tanks polished because they got a good polisher right there. But it's going to be a lot of money and a day out of the schedule. I may not do that. We'll see. And to be honest, the money would be better spent on things that are more important than polish. This truck's pretty rough. It's going to need a lot of stuff. Polish is something that I put pretty important because I want to look at the truck and have it look shiny and nice. Also, it looks good on the road, on the way stations. When you pull through a way station, everything's shiny and clean. There's a lot to that. So I would like to get it polished, but honestly, there's a lot of other things that I need to focus on. So I'll probably focus on that. So you guys, I've got the ScanGauge KR installed here. This is a great tool if you have one of these older trucks. It gives you a bunch of readouts. It just reads the ECM and prints them out. There's a bunch of different parameters you can flip through. Right now I've got fuel mileage, average, current, boost pressure, and RPM, but you can program whatever 4 gauges you want to see. So that's it helps you drive, helps you get better fuel mileage because you can watch what's good and what's bad. So anyway, yeah, you guys leave a comment and let me know if you've tried the dispatch service or if you're thinking about trying the dispatch service. It's still a little early for me to give my full opinion on it, but so far I've been really impressed. I am still doing the carrier packets. I haven't given them the authority to do that yet. And so every time they book a load, they have to bother me with, doing the carrier packet, or the rate confirmations are still going to my company email. So every time they book a load for me or one of my guys, I have to forward them the email. They can sign the rate confirmation, review it, make sure that that's what they agreed to, and then get it back to the broker, get it over to my driver. And so I still have to do a little bit of stuff, but it's pretty easy for me just to send an email, forward an email, and that's pretty simple. All the negotiations, all the calls, all the emailing and all the weekly strategy is handled by the dispatcher. So I was a little bit nervous about that, because I thought nobody's going to dispatch better loads than me, because I know what I'm doing. I know what I need to do. I know what the company needs. I know what I need. I know, you know what I mean? So, but it's been really good. They always call me and double check. Hey, I got this load. Are you interested in it? Yeah, totally. Okay, I'll book it. So they don't just book stuff randomly without getting your consent on it. So, but like I said, guys, leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think about that. Did I go over to the dark side by hiring a dispatch? Do you think that's something that you might look into? Have you done it? That sort of thing. Thanks, guys. Well, good morning, everybody. It is Friday morning. It is the day for everybody to make sure you got a load on board for the weekend. Normally, I would be fairly stressed out today, because right now I've got a load on for the weekend. My van driver does not. He's delivering today. My other flatbed driver, Jeff, he got his trailer worked on. He's home, and trailer was supposed to be done yesterday, but we realized they forgot a step, and so we left the trailer there, and they're gonna hopefully get that step done. It's a pretty quick one, so hopefully they'll get it done this morning, and then he needs a load for Friday. This is the end of the week, so I don't believe he wanted. Jeff did want to work. He didn't want to stay home over the weekend, so we've got 2 loads to book today. But since I hired a dispatch service, it kind of takes a lot of stress off me, because I can sit here and drive and put miles down while those guys are looking and making sure that both my drivers have the best paying loads that they can have. And all I have to worry about is, once the negotiation is done, once we decide on the load, all I have to worry about is dealing with the rate confirmation, or perhaps a carrier packet, which is not very stressful, just because we've already picked the load, we've already made the decisions. All we have to do is do the paperwork. So I'm just kicking back this morning. It's 2 in the morning. Kicking back this morning, sipping on some coffee, and thinking about all the stuff I need to do, and then realize that, wait a minute, I don't have to do anything. So that's kind of exciting. I like that. And then it kind of allows me to focus a little bit more on my operation and what I need to do to this old truck to get it working properly. And I mean, it's working properly. I mean, it's hauling freight, right? But there's a lot of things that just need to be done. For one thing, the speedometer doesn't work. When I bought it, the cruise didn't work, and I changed. I don't think I posted that video. I took a video. That should be a short. I need to make a short on that. I took a video of me changing the speed sensor, like the day after I bought the truck, in the frigid cold. It was like -5 degrees over there, and I was at Iowa 80, and then I drove over to the Peterbilt, picked up that speed sensor, and Now the cruise works because the ECM sees speed, but the dash gauge is broken because it's only showing 15 and it jumps around. I don't know if you can see it from where that camera's set, probably not, but so that's, you know, a small thing because the cruise works and I have speedometer with my Garmin and the scan gauge, the Kevin Rutherford scan gauge. It also one of the you can program one of the 4 gauges that you can read out can be speed, and you can adjust that speed, which I love about that that tool, that scan gauge. So if you guys have an old school truck, with the new school trucks, the skin gauge is less important because you kind of well, yeah, a little less important, I think. I still like them; they're still handy, but for the older trucks, it's very important. For like this, for example, if you didn't have your speedometer, you can set that to read out speedometer. You can adjust your speedometer percentage points up or down to where if it's off 2 or 3, you can adjust the percentage points to where in other words, you can calibrate it. It doesn't calibrate your ECM. It just offsets the gauge to read the right amount. Also, I didn't realize this when I first bought the scan gauge, but I've had one for a long time now, and you can offset the fuel. So you can calibrate your fuel miles per gallon average. So as you fuel up and you do the math, you know, miles divided by gallons, you can adjust the fuel on the gauge to offset what the ECM thinks it's burning, because it's never really correct. The ECM's programmed to know how much fuel it's injecting, but it's always off a little bit. So you can calibrate that number too, to where after 3, 4, maybe 7 times that you fueled up, you can kind of calibrate that miles per gallon on the gauge to read what the pen and paper read. So that's an awesome feature, because then you can be a little more accurate with your estimates, and that helps you drive better because you can see what you're getting for fuel mileage, and you can adjust the gear and adjust the speed and then see what it is. And it allows you to dial in your driving habits for that day, for those conditions. Oftentimes, if I'm driving westbound on 80 through Nebraska or through Cheyenne or Wyoming, you know, you're typically going uphill. You typically have a pretty strong headwind, so things get different. Sometimes, you know, you can play with it. Sometimes you can slow down a little bit, drop 1 gear, and actually pick up fuel mileage, even though you've slowed down and brought the RPM up. So you can just kind of play with that on the day that it is, and each day is a little different. Each condition's a little different. And so, anyway, so yeah, this old truck's got a lot of stuff we need to do to it. I was just sitting here thinking, you know, this truck has 2.4 million miles on it, according to the ECM. Now, the gauge, or the speedometer that doesn't work, says 583,000. Now that's turned over at least once. Apparently it's turned over twice. But it's not true, because the speedometer hasn't worked. He told me that the speedometer hasn't worked for 3 years. So he's been driving it without a speedometer for 3 years. Now here's the thing. If the speed sensor down on the tail shaft has also been broken for 3 years, that means that the 2.3 million miles is actually closer to 2.7 million miles, right? Actually, maybe even 2.8 million miles. So I don't know. So with these old trucks, sometimes you simply don't know how many miles are on the truck, because possibly the ECM's been changed from like a used ECM, and those 2.4 million miles might be associated with a different truck. And unfortunately, it's so difficult to actually get the true numbers. Um, what we do know from the previous owner is that that since the engine overhaul, there's 740,000 miles on the engine. Um, and I haven't really explained a whole lot of who I bought this from, but he was very hard to understand because he didn't speak very good English, and I really struggled to get any data out of him. He didn't understand what I was asking, and then he would try to explain it, but what he explained didn't make sense to me in the context in which I was asking it. So we skipped over a lot of stuff, like I'm like, okay, I guess, I don't get to know that, and it's okay. I did try to ask him how many miles was on it when you did the overhaul, and he either didn't understand me or he didn't answer me. So I still have his phone number and stuff, and I might ask him in text because he's better at text because he can translate it. I might see if I can ask him if he remembers, because back then probably the speedometer worked, right? And the other thing is that if the speedometer hasn't worked for 3 years, how does he know there's 740,000 miles on the overhaul? Maybe he's guessing. I don't know. Maybe he tracked his miles via, Garmin, like I'm doing now. I don't know. But so that's kind of and I guess when you buy an old school truck, the miles don't tend to matter because everything's been replaced at least once, right? So, in fact, oftentimes, so I was looking at a truck when I bought this one. I was looking at a bunch of them. And I was looking at a 379 that was the original owner. And just kind of a clean 379, and I really kind of thought, hey, that's a good move. I should go with that route. It was a one truck 379. He had owned it from the beginning. It had less than 1 million, 9 something. And it was 940 or something like that. And he bought it from the factory. 250,000 miles in, it dropped a valve, and Caterpillar rebuilt it. And then it hasn't been rebuilt since. So it had about 750,000 miles, same as this truck, supposedly, right? And that one was, for sure, I'm sure he had paperwork on it. Or maybe not, I don't know. I'm sure he had the invoice, back, 8 years ago or whenever it was. But it would have been more than that, because it was a 2000 379. But anyway, but sometimes where I was going with that, now that could have been a better truck than this one. Well, would have been a better truck than this one in a couple of, well, I don't actually know. But the problem was it was posted for $63,000, and that was probably an accurate price. I asked him on it. I said, look, I'd love to buy this truck. It's everything I want except for, I just can't get to that 63. And he's like, yeah, I get it. He's like, the most I could come down is 60. And I said, yeah, I agree. Like, I honestly, for 63, that's a deal. It's a good deal. That's a clean truck, one owner. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty rare that you find that. So you're paying a lot for the rarity there. But and it's under 1 million miles, original miles on a 2000 379. That is very, very rare. So it was every bit worth that 60,000 that he was asking. But 60,000 was above where I could get to. We always have what do we call it? A barrier to entry, right? We always have that barrier to entry of, I can't quite get to that price for whatever. And now I could have gotten to that price. I could have pushed my bank up, but I didn't want to go to that price because that just would have put me into a different category that probably I wasn't comfortable with being. This truck was 45,000, and I was able to bring him down to 43. Let's see what did I do, 43.6. And it came with that trailer, if you guys remember, that flatbed trailer. So that flatbed trailer is now for sale. It's posted for $20,000 on Truck Paper if you guys want it. I think that's right where Truck Paper actually Truck Paper values it for 22. So we're a little undervalue on that trailer. So if you guys want it, look it up or comment, leave a comment or something. I try to read all my comments, and we can get it to you. But so that put the price of this truck extremely cheap. If that trailer sells for somewhere around $20,000, that puts the price of this truck extremely cheap for a 379. So that was kind of the reason why I did it. Now, coming back to what I was getting at there, is sometimes that truck that's under 1 million miles sometimes is not in as good a shape as something like this, because at 1 million miles he probably hasn't changed spring bushings. He probably has not changed differentials, probably hasn't changed transmissions, right? So because a lot of those parts will last 1 million. So sometimes it's safer, probably the safest mileage to go with on one of these old classics is about 1.3 or 1.4 million, because at 1.3 or 1.4 it's very unlikely that an engine will make it that long. That is right around the time that engines are going to be rebuilt. So you're going to be, probably getting in a rebuilt engine. It's also, by then, they've normally done some suspension components. Oftentimes by then they've done a transmission. So, a lot of times you're getting a lot newer parts, even if they're not mentioned and even if they don't have the paperwork on them, they just simply can't last that long, so they must have been changed. Or they're going to be pretty obvious that there's no bushings left in your suspension, right? So you can kind of tell. With something under 1 million, it gets a little dicey because you're going to be doing all those little tiny things. This particular truck just fairly recently had all 4 leaf springs changed on the rear. It's got low air leaf, and so it had all 4 of those leaf springs changed. And they also changed the bushings in that, I can't remember, the torque arm, I think is what they call it. They changed both torque arms fairly recently. They still got the sticker on them, and they're fresh bushings. So, and that is a fairly expensive repair. If you do all 4 leaf springs and those torque arms, I don't know what the price is, but I'll bet you're $3 to $4 grand in parts. I'm taking a guess there, but they're kind of expensive parts. So anyway, it is what it is. That's what I chose. I don't know if it was the best decision, but for the price I got the truck for, I figured it was probably the best decision. I'm going to be putting a lot of money into this truck in the next year. It's probably going to look on the spreadsheet like it's a money pit. It's not really going to be a money pit. It's just going to need a lot of, things updated. I'm going to try to just mentally go over the list while I'm driving here with the camera, because I think that anybody who's in my situation is kind of making that list in your head too. And so I don't know where we should start. I'm just going to start with the seat. This has got a fairly decent seat in it. It's called, I think it's the Legacy Lowride seat. It's a very, very popular seat. I hate it. I've had it in several trucks, and I can't stand this seat. I don't know why. Everybody else loves it. And it's a very popular seat, and they sell a lot of them. But I can't stand the way it feels. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't set me up right. I don't know why. So that's going to be on the list. It's not a emergency item, but at some point I just need to change it, and I just need to, not care about the money, just change it. My preferred seat is the Atlas Deluxe 2. That's my favorite seat. The next seat that I like is a Bostrom. I don't know what they call it. I don't like the wide ride. The wide ride is built for 400 or 500 pounders, and I'm not a 400 or 500 pounder, so the wide ride doesn't feel right to me. So I like the standard width seat. And also the wide ride sucks because this Peterbilt has very, very limited space between the seats. And when you put that wide ride in, it even shrinks it down from there. So I don't prefer the wide ride. So the Bostrom is a pretty good seat. I bought that and put it in one of my Plastic Fantastics, and then I drove it for a couple of years, and I was very, very comfortable in that seat. I liked the Atlas a little better, but the Bostrom was perfectly fine. So one of those seats is probably going to go in here, and it might be sooner than later, just because that to me is fairly important. It shouldn't be. I should focus on things like engine overhead, tuning, and exhaust manifold, and all that sort of stuff. But the seat is kind of important. We drive a lot. We're in that seat a lot. Something that's comfortable and you enjoy is kind of a high on the list. And then we've got this other stuff I mentioned. It needs to have a new dampener installed, crank dampener. Every 500,000 miles you need to change that, and this one's probably never had one changed. Pittsburgh Power also sells, if you go through them, they sell a crank dampener, and they also have another component called the mercury filled balancer, and it's just a little ring that's filled with mercury that kind of is just a balancing ring. It's not really all that important. It does kind of balance that crank a little bit. This one idles really smooth, shockingly. I can put the thing up on the steering wheel here, and I can write, and there's no wobbly which is weird. I couldn't even do that with my glider. I don't know why it's so smooth, but so that's kind of on the list. I also need to change all the belts up front. They're looking pretty old and cracked. And that would be a perfect time when you're doing the dampener, because you have to pull off let's see. I don't know if you'd have to pull off the dampener to do the belts, but you'd have to pull off something. And if you have the dampener off, the belts are way easier to change. So that'd be a perfect time to change the belts. I think you don't need to pull the dampener off. You can just feed it. You can lower the belt all the way to the lowest adjustment and then feed it through the fan, and you can get those changed without, well, let's see, no, because you still need to, yeah, I think that would work. I can't remember. I did it on my last truck, and it seemed like it was a bigger pain in the butt than it needed to be. But anyway, I really would probably, this is kind of a later thing, not an important thing, but I would really like to get a upgraded exhaust manifold on here. The full tilt manifold, that's a really good manifold. Does help with efficiency a little bit. So that would be a good upgrade. I need new tires. Again, not really an emergency, but I don't know if you guys can hear it or feel it, but there's quite a bit of vibration in here. And I can feel it in the wheel when I turn. And so that tells me that steer tire is not balanced properly. And so we can fix that. It's got fairly new steer tires on there. They're not the brand I would prefer. They're a Firestone brand, not really my favorite brand, but we can fix those tires by balancing them by either the Centromatic balancing rings, or back home my tire guy can fluid balance them. He has fluid he can put inside the tire. That works pretty damn good. And then he can true the tires, meaning he cuts the tire rubber down to where it's round, because tires are mostly round, but they're never perfectly round. So you can basically shave them to where they're round. That makes a big deal when it comes to front end. Every time he trues my steer tires, it just drives super smooth. So that's, you know, in the list, on the list. Also the driveline. It's kind of my, you know, policy when you buy a new truck, you pull that driveline off and you rebalance it, because, you know, as much as they might have been balanced from the factory, they weren't balanced very well from the factory, and I don't know how drivelines do this, but they get out of balance slowly. They wear, they fatigue, they bend a little bit, and oftentimes an old driveline is bent and way out of balance. And I think that could be another area where my vibration is coming from. And so, you know, just take all the driveline off, rebalance everything. The inner axle driveline, the small one between the two axles, it might need a new slip yoke. It's not disastrous, but there's a little bit of slop there, so that may need to be changed. You know, nothing serious, nothing, you know, an emergency, but it would help if it was changed. So that's on the list. Let's see. What else is on the list? You know, if I do take the truck to Pittsburgh Power, I need to remember this. And I've been so busy lately, I haven't even had a chance to write. I need to get an actual pen and paper and write down the stuff on the list so I can keep adding it. Or oftentimes what I'll do is, rather than the pen and paper, use my phone's notes, because my phone goes everywhere I do, and the pen and paper tends to get left somewhere. But the other thing that I had to think about doing, if I go to Pittsburgh Power and they change that dampener and balancer, that would be a good time to install the manifold, because they have it there. Pretty sure they'd have it in stock. Caleb back home could install the manifold, no problem. And a turbo if I decide to do a turbo as well. But Pittsburgh Power could do it. They're there. They might have a little more tooling in case one of those bolts snap off, which is fairly common. You know, you could, you know, drill it out and pull it out and then re-helicoil it possibly. Whereas Caleb is a little more limited in that ability. Although sometimes Caleb's better at it than others, so it's hard to say. But so that could be a good thing to do at Pittsburgh Power. Also, while I'm there, I don't want to overdo the list, because, you know, we got to go make some money too. But I really like that OPS oil bypass filter. That's a really cool feature. It really keeps that oil clean, which is a big deal when you're running an engine like this that has so many miles on it. You want to keep that oil as clean as possible. I'm pretty shocked how well this engine runs, considering it has 740. Camera just died on me. Considering it had 740, it runs pretty well, because right now it's like 73 pounds of oil pressure. And if I take out, it's right here, guys. I don't know if you can see it. It's on the left side of the steering wheel there. If I pull it out of gear and put just neutral, it'll just coast here for a second, bring it down to idle. It's a little over 40 pounds of pressure at idle when hot. My glider with the new engine was only like 20 pounds at idle. And I don't think it ever got to 70. It was like, what was it, 65 maybe when I was cruising. So, and it doesn't have much blow-by when you look at it. There's hardly any blow-by, and you should be seeing a fairly noticeable amount of blow-by at 740,000 miles, typically speaking. So, he must have taken pretty good care of it. He said that he changed oil every 10,000 miles, which is way overkill typically, but maybe that is what kept it in such good shape. So maybe he was wise for doing that. So anyway, keeping that oil clean with an oil bypass system would be probably a really good investment. They're fairly expensive. I want to say they're $800-900 for the unit, but it's probably one of those really good investments to make. Not an emergency because we can just change oil. If you have one of those, you can start to extend your oil intervals a little bit and feel a little better about it. You can also, it makes it very easy to take a sample because there's a little valve right on that filter housing that you can just push the button and you get a little spray of oil out the bottom. And so you can take an oil sample whenever you need to with no extra tools. Just push the button and you get a little tiny spit of oil out, and you can fill up your sample kit and then send it in. And you get the best quality oil because it's running, right? Your engine's running, it's circulating the oil, so you get the best sample when it's circulating. So that's probably going to be on the list. I don't know where on the list it's going to be. But if I'm at Pittsburgh Power getting the dampener done, belts done, maybe manifold done, maybe even a turbo, that's going to get awful expensive. And then it would be a good time when I'm there to have them install that OPS. Either that or order the OPS and have Caleb do it back home. You're starting to get a pretty long list, and the whole idea here is that I want to do this stuff while I'm running the truck. So, if we go up to Pittsburgh Power, the idea would be just be down for one day, a 34 reset, get everything done, and then back on the road. That would be the hope. And so cutting the list down to where we can get it all done, like probably not the manifold at that point, considering that there's no problem with this manifold. It's not leaking, it's not broke, it's not, nothing's wrong with it. So probably don't do that. Just do the dampener, the balancer, the front belts, and then an OPS. That could be a good choice. I just thought of something else on the Cat. I'm not a big fan of the FAS fuel system. Pittsburgh Power is a big fan of it, and they always try to push it. But I'm not a big fan of that. I've done it on at least one Cat, and I've done it on one PACCAR, and it kind of complicates the mix, to be honest. And I haven't seen any benefit from it. So I'm not really a big fan. Now, if you have fuel lines that are leaking, and which could be the case on this one, if you have cracked suction lines that they probably don't leak air because they're always under suction, or sorry, they probably don't leak diesel fuel because they're always under suction, but they'll pull air in to your fuel, aerating your fuel. That's where the FAS can really come in handy because it takes the air back out again before it hits the engine. But I'm a little against the FAS for whatever reason. It's a good upgrade. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a little overkill and it overcomplicates things. So I probably won't do it. But on the fuel side, if you have a Cat, there's a nut. There's like a, let's see, is it like a, what is it, a 13/16 or a 11/16 nut, right as the Cat fuel filter, not the water separator, but the Cat fuel filter, right as that line starts to go right before that line takes off and goes into the head, there's a nut you can pull out, which is it's a fuel spring. Hang on. Yeah, that's a fuel return spring. So what that does is it keeps the pressure in the head at a certain PSI. Now I can't remember the number that Cat recommends. I think it's 60 or 65 PSI is what Cat recommends. That spring gets worn out over time and it starts to reduce its fuel pressure. And so that is a good upgrade if you just buy a new, I can't remember, fuel return spring, I think they call it. And throw that in there to kind of, it brings your fuel pressure back up to where it should be. They always run fine with low fuel pressure. We don't notice it, but you'll get a little better fuel mileage. You probably get a little better torque on the bottom end because you have that higher fuel pressure. The overall fuel injection pressure comes from the injector itself. The fuel pressure taking the fuel to the injector, or what we call the lift pump, doesn't really add to the injection pressure. So that's why they run fine even with low fuel pressure. But you won't be able to hear the difference, in other words, but you might be able to see the difference in fuel mileage. You also might be able to feel the difference in how responsive the throttle is, the bottom end torque, the max horsepower, that sort of thing. Might make some, like on a dyno, you might be able to see a power difference if you adjust that. If you ran a dyno pull and then adjusted that, assuming it was low, right? I don't know that it's low. We haven't tested it, but probably a good idea to change that. If they're pretty cheap, I don't remember what they cost. Probably less than 20 bucks. I don't know. Cat part, man, might be 30 bucks, but and it's just, you just pull it out and you put the new one in. It's super simple. So that's on the list for sure. Again, not an emergency thing. Their clutch brake is on the list. That could be a good thing that I might have Pittsburgh Power do if I'm there. This truck unfortunately has a factory clutch brake on there, which is not a, it looks like it's a solid one, which kind of sucks because we have to cut that one off and try not to damage the shaft. And Pittsburgh Power might have the tooling to do that, so that could be a good thing to do there. I have to put that on the list. So cut that one off, put a new one on. It's just worn out, and it doesn't work real well. Which, if you guys aren't aware of that, what that means is when you try to get it in gear from stopped, you push the clutch all the way to the bottom. It should slow the transmission down to match the gear. Or sorry, should slow the clutch down to match the gear. To mesh everything. And so you'll get that, where you try to put it into gear, is you get that rumble on your gear because the clutch brake's not slowing anything down. And so that's what this is almost, when it's hot, it's almost non-existent. You can push the clutch all the way to the floor and it won't slow anything down at all, practically. So that needs to be changed. The other thing I might do is I might go to to Peterbilt or one of the manufacturers and pick up the smallest clutch brake they have. So they have different thicknesses. I might pick up the smallest one they have and just add it in the chain. I don't know how that would work. That could end up being too big and mess things up. Because all it is just a little like a little brake pad in there that I can't remember how they work, but and I don't know what the smallest one is. If the smallest one's like 0.35 of an inch, I know the largest one they have is like 0.5, like a half inch, or they might even have a larger one, like a 0.6. But if I add it to the existing one that's worn out, I'd want to have the smallest one they make. If I cut that old one out and put one in, I'd probably go with the 0.5. I've used the 0.5 a lot. That always works well. But I don't know that. So that might be, I might be able to put a clip-in one on there and add it to the chain, and just go with a small one, and that might work. It might be a little big because if you stack them, you're going to be, even if you stack the small ones, you're going to be 3/4 of an inch basically. It's going to be a little big. In other words, you're going to hit the clutch brake way before you hit the bottom of the clutch throw, right? So, but that would be a quick, easy fix that I could do. I could go get one of those and put it on there real quick. I might try that. Let's see, what else was there? We definitely need to do an overhead. I kind of wanted to have Caleb do that. He's always done a really good job doing overheads for me. And Caleb's my brother-in-law. He's my, back home mechanic. Um, he's got a big project in his shop right now, though, um, or there's at least one truck or maybe two trucks, and so I don't know. He's going to be probably a week or better, maybe 2 weeks before he gets that project done. So he won't have shop space, unless it's a couple of weeks from now. So, so anyway, that's just what I'm thinking about. Instead of thinking about loads for my guys, I'm thinking about how we're going to get this truck lined out properly. And the other thing I'm thinking about is, I really do need to, because I was down for so long and I got so screwed up financially, that I do need to, not take a bunch of downtime to get this thing fixed. That's why I'm thinking about going to Pittsburgh Power rather than scheduling home time. First of all, Caleb's got a bunch of projects in his shop. He can't really get to me. And then secondly, I don't really prefer to go home because I kind of get stuck home for whatever reason. You go home and you kind of get stuck there. Either, we get stuck in Caleb's shop doing repairs and finding one thing after another. And Caleb's a one-man show. He's the only, he's a one-man mechanic, so it takes him a little longer to get things done than if you take it to Pittsburgh Power, because they've got a bunch of mechanics that can all get on it. You know what I mean? But also, I just tend to get stuck at home. I don't know why. And home is a horrible market. So even when you do get the truck running and you get back to running again, now you're coming out and now you might have to wait a day to get the right load. And so Pittsburgh Power might be a better place to go to, because that's up in Western PA. Western PA's fairly okay market for flatbed. In fact, very good if you want to go east from there. You can get some really, really high rates right now. So that might be in my future. I might think about doing that. Run in there, get a few of these items accomplished, hopefully get it done in the same day, hopefully at a time that I already kind of need a reset anyway. Get that reset in, get, dampener put on, get the belts changed, maybe put an OPS on there, maybe even go for the manifold, get that upgrade done. And let's talk about the turbo, because I'm a little unsure on the turbo, because, oh, wait a minute, guys. I'm not in the right gear. Thought something sounded weird. So I'm a little unclear on the turbo, because I thought I knew what to do on the turbo. I was going to put on the standard turbo that everybody puts on cats, which is the 132 exhaust housing and a 78 millimeter wheel. And I was talking to my tune guy, my ECM tune guy, kind of told him what I was trying to do with this truck. Look, I'm not looking for high horsepower. I just want to, keep it mostly stock. We're going to go with a 475 file, which actually is a downgrade from here. I think it's got a 550 file on it now. And we're going to tune it well. We're just going to change some timing around, tune it well, go for fuel mileage. And because for what I haul, 80,000 pounds of flatbed freight, we don't need horsepower, guys. We really don't. Like, I've had a truck for years that had 960 horsepower, and it didn't matter. It didn't make me any more money. It didn't matter. It didn't make me climb the hills any faster, because ultimately I'm behind the PACCAR in front of me, right? Or I'm behind the DD15 that's under-tuned or whatever, or the DD13. So, you're just going to be in a line going up the hill behind all the other trucks. It doesn't matter how much horsepower you have. And if you have too much horsepower, then you have too much heat in the engine and you have to back out of it anyway, and you can't use the horsepower. So I'm not really any more a fan of high horsepower, real high horsepower. The 600, 700 horsepower, that's a real good horsepower range for the Cat. They run well. They live a long time at that rate, and they run pretty good. But I think I'm just going to go low horsepower. The way I like to drive it is to keep the cruise set all the time. That probably wouldn't work well with 700 horsepower, because you would have to take it out of cruise to climb the hill, because you've got to monitor your heat. So, and even if you didn't have to take it out of cruise to monitor your heat, if you leave the cruise set at 700 horsepower, guess what? When you climb a hill, it is game on. That ECM doesn't know any better. It is game on, right? Everything that ECM's got goes to the ground to get you up the hill. Unless you take the cruise off and you do it with your foot, which I don't prefer to do. So just the way I like to drive, I think I'm better off leaving a low tune in there, because then when I go to climb a hill on cruise control, like I'm on cruise control right now, it's game on again. But guess what? It's limited to 475 horse. So that's my theory on it. I don't know if that's a correct theory. Almost all the tuners will say you get better fuel mileage as you go up in horsepower. That's probably true for most people, but just my driving habits, I don't know if that's true. So that's kind of what I wanted to do, and I talked to my engine tuner about it, and I said, hey, what turbo should we go with to kind of make that work right? And he's like, and he kind of thought about it for a while, and he's like, I think I'd go with the stock turbo. And I'm like, really? The wastegated turbo? He's like, yeah. He's like, I don't think you're going to get much gain from the upgraded turbo when you go with that low a horsepower. And I hadn't thought about that before. So I don't know. And then I've gotten really good luck with that 132 and 78 millimeter wheel. So I'm fairly convinced that that's the best turbo. But he might be onto something, because for what I was explaining to him, the habit in which I like to drive, I like to leave that cruise set, run the RPM down lower than I should. Like right now, the RPM's at 1346. And so if I was heavy today and I hit a hill, I'd like to run that RPM down to 1250 before I make a shift. And kind of what he was saying, if that's the way you like to drive, that wastegated turbo might actually perform better, just because it's tuned well for that, lower horsepower and kind of lugging that engine, so to speak, which is how I like to drive. So I don't know. I got the stock turbo on there now. I got the wastegated turbo on there now. So it kind of would be nice to get the tune done, run that turbo for a few months at least, then order the new turbo, put the new turbo on, put the stock one on the shelf, right? And go run it for a couple of months and see if it's any better. So that might be my move. Also, turbos are fairly expensive anymore, about $2,400. Pretty inexpensive when you consider all the other, new turbos with all the VGT crap. It's pretty inexpensive, but still it's a pretty big bill. So I think I'll just run this turbo for, a few months at least, probably into late spring or early summer. Then I might think about changing it to see if I can get a gain in fuel mileage. I kind of think I will, but the engine tuner didn't think so. So we'll see. And I think I think like naturally speaking, you should get a gain when you go to that upgraded turbo. But I think why he said no was because how I explained what I like to do. I like to run that. I like to leave the cruise set on the hill and let that RPM come down. Not keep that RPM high on the hill, which you should. I do. If I need to make a shift, then I will run the RPM up. But like on small hills where I don't need to make a shift, I just like to let it lug up the hill, because if you don't break torque, it's technically better. If you just keep that torque on the wheels the whole way up the hill and don't have to break torque to split a gear, and you're not slowing down, that should be better, in my opinion. So we will see. Yeah, that's all I can think about. I know I'm probably missing a lot of stuff. But everything else on this truck seems pretty good. So I think that's the list. It's going to get quite extensive, and I'm sure there's other things that will pop up. But yeah, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm on my way down to Florida. I'm going to drop that load in Florida. Oh, the other things that has nothing to do with engine or tuning or performance is, you know, I really need to get the tanks polished. If you guys have seen pictures of this truck, I don't know if these tanks have ever been polished, and they've been hit with acid a lot. So probably every time you wash the truck, you hit the tanks with acid, so they are white instead of shiny. So we need to get these tanks polished, and it's going to be a big one because they're going to have to sand them. I'm pretty positive they're going to have to sand these tanks and my wheels. So that's going to be a fairly substantial bill to get it polished. I'm hoping I can, I don't know, we'll see. And it probably shouldn't be at the top of the list, even though I'm kind of putting it more towards the top of the list because I like polish and I like to look at it and it looks good. And if you're going to have a long hood truck like this, it's nice to have the outside appearance look nice, which right now it looks like crap. So that might be pushed to the top of the list. I'm going down to Wildwood, Florida, or Tampa to deliver, so I'll be right through Wildwood. If I can afford the day down, because it's going to basically take a day down. Now, those guys at a cut above is where it's right there in Wildwood at the Pilot. They have a little booth set up at the Pilot there, and they do work over the night. So I might be able to pull in there like Sunday night. Let's see. Can I get there by Sunday night? I might not be able to get there by Sunday night. But if I can't get there by Sunday night, I might be able to deliver Monday, go pick up a load in Tampa somewhere, come back out with it for like a Tuesday delivery in Alabama would be ideal, right? Maybe I could go to Plant City and pick up another one of those Hardy board loads that I did a video on. That was a pretty good load, and it went up to Alabama. So, and then stop in at Wildwood. I'd be able to get to Wildwood probably by noon or 1, get the truck in the polish shop, and they could polish it up and have it done probably by 10, 11 o'clock at night. I could be sleeping in the bunk while they're polishing. I've done that before. And they'd wake me up when they're done. I'd go park it, connect it back to my trailer, and finish off my sleep, and then wake up at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning and boogie for my delivery. That could work. Sounds a little stressful to me, just to get the tanks. I'd rather do it when I'm not in a hurry. But so I don't know. We'll see. But polishing the aluminum is definitely on the list because we want to have a nice looking truck. So, and it's going to be expensive, and it's just going to be one of the money things that I have to do to this truck. It's known, I know about it. So ideally we wouldn't do it for a few months. We'd go make some money with it, but I don't know if I can live with it that long. So might be top of the list, which seems backwards, but it is what it is. So anyway, guys, that's what I got going on this week. And leave a comment. Let me know what you think should be top of the list of all those things I talked about. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, over here in Florida, Pinellas Park, Florida, to unload. It's a little chilly for Florida, but I'm happy with it. Look at this, guys. I got the stopped in Wildwood. Got some polish. Look at that. Still got to fix this. That's all busted. Got a new badge. Need to put a new badge there too. Looking good. All right, guys, I'm all wrapped up. There it is. All ready for them to come and get it with a forklift. Yep, trailer looks pretty good too. I had it washed. I'd love to polish the aluminum on the trailer. It's big money though. A lot of surface to polish. This is a new box. I still need to pull the shit off. Anyway, it is before 8 still in the morning, so I'm just gonna wait, get this off. I'm not gonna be in a big hurry. My dispatcher will be looking for a load at 8 o'clock. I would start looking earlier, but they don't get in until 8, so we'll see how that works. I think I'll just leave him to it. I don't think I'll get in his way, and we'll see how it works.